All right, y'all. So, in the spirit of new pope being elected, right? Let's check out 20 of the creepiest things hidden in the Vatican. Let's go.
Welcome to the Vatican, where history meets mystery and a few things that might just give you the creeps. From hidden treasures to strange relics, the Vatican is not only a religious hub, but also home to secrets that would make even Indiana Jones nervous. Grab your magnifying glass and your courage, because you're about to dive into 20 creepiest things hidden in the Vatican. Number 20. The Vatican Secret Archives. Given the importance of the Vatican, it makes sense that there are secret locations in the place that are reserved only for those who are cardinals or even just specifically the Pope. That brings us to the very real and highly speculated upon room known as the Vatican Secret Archives. To be clear, yes, the place is actually called the Secret Archives when you look at the Latin version of the name, but when you look at the branching meanings of it, one of the versions...
I have a question for y'all pertaining to the newly elected pope. With these secret archives, can he just step in and say, you know what? I no longer want these archives to be a secret. I want everyone to have full access, and I want nothing but open transparency from this point forward. Does he have the power to do that? Or would it take more people than him to get on the same page to be able to, for something like that to happen? Not saying it will happen, but I'm just asking, does he have that authority to just do that? I'm wondering.
Means more of a private archive, and that's where the truth really lives. We can prove it too, because people in the modern day have gone to these archives and have read some of what's inside the books and text and letters that are in the place. And if you're curious, the reason the place is so secretive is that everything in it has connections to the Pope and the Vatican across all the ages. I mean that literally, as there are documents that go all the way back to the Middle Ages itself. Now, this isn't just some kind of treasure trove, it's basically a long-form history book that's spread out across numerous members of the Catholic Church and the ones who have been in charge of it all these years. The many scholars who have been able to go in there have been amazed at some of the details and insights into the historical events, from the fall of Rome to the rise of Christianity and more, that are contained within these kilometers worth of shelves. But to be fair, there are some areas that are not open to the people just yet, but that doesn't mean that they contain any kind of truly dark documents that the world wasn't meant to see. It just means that they aren't accessible yet, or the documents are so damaged that they truly cannot be read.
Yeah. Tell that to the conspiracy theorist in me. When you're telling me there's places that are have restricted access that we can't get to, that lets me know that, or to me, it just screams out that something's being hid, kept from us, being, that's the conspiracy theorist in me that thinks that. So that's why I asked that question, because I wonder if there'll be a pope that comes forward one day, if he has that authority to be like, you know what? Let's silence everyone. Let's make everything open to the public.
Sadly, that's happened to many documents within this archive, but even still, it's a great place of living history, and the only creepy thing is that it arguably should be a whole lot creepier, but somehow it's not. Now it's time for the sweet topic. Does the Pope have a selection of alien corpses hidden in the basement of the Vatican? Well, if this image is to be believed, then yes. Yes, he does. It was uploaded by a man who insists that he is an insider in the Vatican, and the photo's genuine, but I can't help but be suspicious. With so many theories, rumors, and tales about the Vatican, you can't help but wonder if something else is going on. As always, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below using the hashtag #SweetTopic. Number 19. The Vatican Necropolis. When you think of a necropolis, you may think of the ones from Egypt, where there were massive burial sites containing dozens of people, typically family members, all located within a set of chambers so that they could join the afterlife together. And when you hear the phrase the Vatican Necropolis, you may get that same idea, but for the people who lived in the Holy City, right? Well, no actually. That's actually what makes it kinda creepy. This necropolis was actually not planned by the church, but as a kind of accident that resulted from laws in ancient Rome and the expansion of the Vatican itself. The Vatican Necropolis lies under the Vatican City at depths that vary between 5 to 12 meters below St. Peter's Basilica. That's important for one very basic reason, because in the 1940s the Vatican offered some excavations into the area and soon found the remains of a necropolis. But how did it get there if the Vatican didn't approve it? Well, that's because it was built during the time of ancient Rome, and back in those days it was actually illegal for people to be buried in the city itself. The people got clever and used the various roads that were just outside of the city limits to bury their dead. And one of those roads went alongside what would become Vatican Hill, and you can see where the rest of this is going. Fast forward just a bit, and Emperor Constantine wanted to build St. Peter's Basilica over his alleged tomb, and that meant burying parts of the necropolis which at the time were protected by law. So it got buried and was not rediscovered until the 1940s. It just goes to show you that nothing is truly sacred when history gets involved, and sometimes you never know what's buried under your own 2 feet until you dig it up and see it for yourself. Number 18. The escape route. Now, admittedly, this isn't the creepiest thing that I'll be talking about on this list, as I've already proven in various ways, but it is something that needs to be talked about because it's arguably one of the most important parts of the Vatican itself. Specifically, there is a place in the Vatican that's full-on escape route. Escape route for whom, you may ask? Well, the Pope, of course. Did you think that there wasn't some kind of emergency hatch for him to get out of if there was an invading force coming in after him? I mean, come on, people. The irony with that last statement.
And the way my brain works now is, if you're telling us about it, then that means he has more than one. It can't just be a single one, and y'all are letting people in on it and know about it and make aware that it exists. Then there has to be several options that the Pope and his staff and his security team possibly have to get him out of a situation if one presents itself. It gotta be now.
Statement is that there have been multiple times where that scenario has indeed played out. For example, in 1494, France invaded Italy, and the Pope passed through the secret passage in order to avoid danger. Fast forward to 1527, when Rome was being sacked, and the Holy Roman armies descended on the Vatican and killed a lot of the troops who were assigned to protect the Pope, yet the man was able to escape because of his secret passageway. How long is this particular secret exit? Well, only about 800 meters, which may seem like a lot, but when you're running for your life, you're willing to do a whole lot more to get to safety. Is this particular passageway still available for the Pope to use? Well, yes and no. Technically, the passageway is still open, but it has seen better days. In fact, the entire place has become a kind of tourist attraction that people can actually visit. Now you can really walk there, where the popes of the past have ran away, just to see how deep the passage is. And that leaves the question of, is there another secret exit for the Pope should something happen in the modern day? Well, more than likely yes, it's just not going to be as advertised as this particular one. After all, you don't want all of your potential enemies to know the ways in and out of a place that's about to be attacked, right? This should be the ultimate piece of proof of how far the Vatican is willing to go to protect their highest-ranking member. Number 17. Exorcism. Now we're going to get back into the creepy stuff, and depending on what you believe, you might feel that possession is a very real danger that actually exists due to both demons and spirits and devils and whatnot of the various pantheons. Hollywood just never gets tired of doing possession stories that are based on true tales, and wanting viewers to wonder just how real that it was. Naturally, the Pope and the Catholic Church as a whole have been big believers in possession, and have carried out tens of thousands of exorcisms over the years, according to them, which includes many of those being done by a singular man who was the right hand of a former pope. The fact that the Vatican does exorcisms is not creepy inherently, as they are big believers in possession and ridding the victim's body of evil.
I'm starting to think we should all be big believers in some form of possession. Hear me out. Because I think there are different levels of it. The extreme levels of which we see, or you know what I mean, our mind can take us to believing that they possibly levitate or they possibly get possessed and their eyes turn and different things happen and they have superhuman strength and all kinds. That may be the extreme level. But I believe that there are like moderate and lower levels than that display levels of possession. Think about it. Take, for instance, a serial killer or any type of murderer. Like, what in their mind does that, right? Causes them to have split personalities or have this thing inside of them speak to them and tell them to do that. A lot of times when we hear them in an interrogation, they're saying something told them or something. Who are we to say that that's not true? I know we feel like that at the time and feel like you're in control of your own conscience, but what if they're not? And something got into them and possessed them and they started doing things that they wouldn't normally do. It was more like something took over them. So you can tell I've been thinking about this. Are there different stages of possessions? One to where it gets all the way out of hand and you got to strap them to the bed, and ones where they take over and have them do things, go out in the world and kill and stuff like that. So I've been thinking about that. I'm glad they brought this topic up though.
However, sometimes they've gone to extreme lengths to try and get that spirit out, and have even had to spell out when and where to do an exorcism itself. That's dangerous for many reasons, not the least of which is that the 90-page text that explains the Vatican's rationale for this kind of thing wasn't exactly the most strict at points, and other topics should have been obvious and not needed to be written down. For example, one section talked about how possession could only sometimes be simple illnesses, and thus an exorcism should only take place after serious injury is done to the victim and the experts are consulted. If you didn't know, there have been many Catholic priests who have used the guise of an exorcism to do a lot of things to victims, including a whole lot of women, and that is truly what is creepy here. Number 16. The Vatican's art collection. Stepping toward something that is far less creepy, we now head to art. When you think about the Vatican, I'm sure that art is something that immediately pops into your mind, and that's fine. In fact, the museum that holds many pieces of art in the city was a passion project of sorts from one of the popes who felt the Vatican had to try and reconnect with modern culture, and that art was the best way to do that. When you think about it, it does make sense. It's easy for a place like this and the people like the Pope to feel above it all and thus look down on the people. So by showing that they love things like modern art, they can bridge the gaps within the community, and today the collection consists of about 8,000 works featuring a rich overview of the 20th century Italian and international art. Is it a bit odd that this is one of the key features of a religious entity? Well, perhaps a little bit, but there are more weird things to be shown off, including those that are allegedly religious relics that are stashed away within the place. Number 15. The Vatican's financial affairs. We'll now turn to an entirely different kind of topic, which is, admittedly, one that makes people nervous, and that is finances. If I were to ask you about your financial state right now and how you get your money and what you spend it on, you'd likely be able to spell out everything in great detail. Everyone has bills to pay, right? But how do you think that the Vatican does its own finances? Well, it's not so easy to answer. And that's partially by design, because like many entities in today's world, the Vatican doesn't just share its finances, even if it really should. One thing that we can note right off the bat is that Vatican City is a sovereign city-state, which means that it's technically a country of about 1,000 people. That means that it runs its own economy and makes money off of it, but that's not all. The Vatican then takes that money and it invests it all over the world, which includes several private enterprises. That also doesn't cover the various donations that the place gets through believers, which makes it all the more odd that they aren't just a bit more transparent with how much money they actually get. Especially after a certain bank within the city had quite the scandal once upon a time. Number 14. The Crusades. Now we're getting into the more dark and menacing side of the Vatican and the Pope, because the Crusades were labeled as holy wars, and given that Catholicism was the dominant religion of those leading the Crusades, that means the Pope gave their blessing to them more times than not, right? Well, yes, actually, that very much is true. For example, during the First Crusade, where 70,000 Muslims were killed in the name of converting people to Christianity, the Pope himself oversaw the war and even blessed certain individuals who fought in the battles to come, so that they wouldn't be judged for their own sins. That's right, the Pope basically told certain soldiers to go nuts and you'll be fine in the next life. And that's when he allowed them to commit whatever atrocities that they deemed to be necessary for the Trinity. That's not exactly how forgiveness and atonement is supposed to go, just saying. World War I and II showed two very different sides of the Vatican, as during the First World War, they were doing everything in their power to try and bring peace to Europe, even selling valuables within the church to help those in need. In the Second World War, it was a lot more of a gray area, which included the Pope at that time striking up deals with the Third Reich, while also refusing to condemn many of their actions, which led to Pope Pius as becoming what's known as Hitler's Pope. It's creepy and not cool at all. Number 13. The Knights Templar. Now, I just talked about the Crusades, but I'll talk about one of the main groups of that period who had a unique impact on history later on. That would be the Knights Templar. Just to not get anything in a twist, the Knights Templar were a French military group that were devout in their Catholic faith, and they didn't start out fighting wars. They were actually meant to help people traveling to Jerusalem. Eventually, they were blessed by the Catholic Church and the Pope himself, and that's when they became one of the wealthiest and best trained fighting groups in the world, including leading the charge on many of the Crusades. Ironically, they later on were disbanded by the French king at the time due to the ruler not having any trust in them, though today they are still rumored to live on. Number 12.
Sound like the CIA, don't it? I was sitting here thinking like, that sounds eerily familiar, doesn't it? I can think of 3 letters that might, who knows? That could be where they got the idea from. You never know, but boy, that sounded like the CIA to me.
The Shroud of Turin. This is arguably one of the most controversial elements on the list, bar none. The Shroud of Turin is an alleged religious artifact claiming to be the cloth that was worn by Jesus Christ after he was wrapped up and placed in a tomb following his crucifixion. That alone would make it unique, but not a holy relic of sorts, except that the cloth is said to have an imprint of what Christ's face looked like at the time, and that makes it an artifact of extreme importance if it's actually real. That's something that no one, not even the Catholic Church, can definitely get behind. There are a lot of people who believe in this cloth being real, and some even worship it and the holy face of Jesus as a result. However, others would note that between when it was discovered, many years after Jesus Christ had been allegedly resurrected, and the time that it was actually tested by modern science, some of the details that were given just didn't add up. Obviously, one cannot 100% prove that this was the cloth over Christ's face, and that's what makes it so controversial. Many want to believe that it's real, and others are trying to be more objective, and thus the cloth continues to be a controversy. As for where the Vatican stands on it, they have not endorsed nor denied it, and that says quite a bit on its own. Number 11. The Spear of Destiny. I'm going to stick with the death of Jesus Christ for a moment because there's another relic from his crucifixion that stands out in the minds of both religious believers and pop culture alike. The Spear of Destiny isn't just some kind of magical spear that someone created. It's the actual spear that pierced the side of Christ during his crucifixion, and due to that, it's one of the most important parts of the event itself, as it was the weapon that technically killed Jesus. As such, many people believe that holding the Spear of Destiny gives one not only incredible power, but the ability to win in any battle they choose. That ties to the Vatican in many ways, as one such holy lance.
I guess this is about perspective, because I wouldn't think that you would gain some power holding that which was the alleged spear that killed Jesus. I would think that would make that spear cursed, right? Like maybe something bad happens to you when you possess that spear in your hands or something like that because of what it was used for. So yeah, I would look at that totally different. I wouldn't be excited to grab a hold to that and see what happens next.
Was allegedly wielded by Crusaders to help them win a key battle. The lance has also been used in various pop culture franchises, including Constantine and Hellboy. Creepily enough, there are 4 alleged Spears of Destiny in the world right now, and one of them is indeed in Rome near the Vatican. Number 10. The Apparitions of St. Peter. When you're dealing with a major religious organization like the Vatican, there are going to be more than one ghost story that you hear around the place. Possibly the one that's most prominent in this place is the Apparitions of St. Peter, which is a direct reference to the Apostle Peter who served at the side of Christ. According to legend, a different St. Peter bore witness to an apparition that resembled St. Peter, as he was when he died. The vision was so striking that a series of painted portraits were made and then placed around the Vatican to help cement it into history. 11 of those paintings do remain today, and some claim that the ghost of St. Peter can still be seen walking around within the Vatican's walls. Number 9. Giuseppe Momo's Spiral Staircase. A staircase that has to be something special to be labeled as creepy in any way, and Giuseppe Momo's spiral staircase apparently fits that mold in a whole lot of ways. Long story short, it was a special spiral staircase set within a particular part of the Vatican that was meant to be for private use for different people. One such person was the Pope at the time, who believed that having this kind of staircase would allow him to go up and down while also within his carriage, because he didn't want to continually walk up and down a staircase himself. This just in, the Pope, well, can sometimes be lazy. You can visit the modern version of the staircase today via special tours, but just not in the Pope's carriage.
Hey, the narrator said that, not me. I didn't say that, bro. Wow, I couldn't believe he said that. I was like, what? The Pope could be what? So he said that, not me. Don't come at me with your barrage of attacks.
Number 8. The Lost Books. I've already talked about the secret archive that the Vatican has, but what's this about lost books? Well, it's a bit more complicated than you may think. The Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden are a special collection of translated text from various other books, claiming to be the lost parts of the Holy Bible or even other chapters that were left out of what we now know as the Bible. It would make sense that the Vatican has these due to them being at the epicenter of the Catholic faith, and so they would want all major texts that tie back to their religion. This importance of these texts can be debated, but it's fair to think that the Vatican feels they're important enough to keep. Number 7. The Vatican Observatory. Science and the Church of any kind has not always had the best of relationships. However, when it comes to the Vatican, they have a totally non-creepy belief that science is important. They've tried to elevate it over the years, especially in the fields of science that they feel is the key part of their religion, just like with astronomy.
Here is the dome.
After all, without knowing the placement of certain celestial bodies, it can be hard to determine dates, and so you might misrepresent what happened in the Bible. That's where the Vatican Observatory comes into play, as this was a full-on astronomical tower that was built to help observe the stars above, and many scientists were allowed to use it. One irony of this is that multiple observatories have been built over the years, including the most recent one, which is built outside of the Vatican itself. Number 6. Dead Man on Trial. Now we're back to the creepy bits of the Vatican's history. You see, while things may seem stable and nice, within the religious order it's absolutely not always been that way, and those who are used to having the name of the Pope have done really odd and creepy things to both show their power and flex the might of the Holy Church. Arguably, one of the creepiest and most shameful abuses of power was called the Cadaver Synod, or the Cadaver Trial, where the dead body of a recently deceased pope was brought before a court of his peers, including the pope that had come after him, and placed on trial, being declared guilty of numerous crimes before being stripped of his pope status in the afterlife. Yes, it was a full-on sham trial of a dead body, and this kind of abuse of power was apparently typical back then, especially with all—
Hey, I ain't gonna lie, I be wanting some of this to happen to some people who get out of going to jail. Like, take for instance somebody who's done something and been committing crimes for a long time, and finally when the police catch up to him, he dies or he passes away, you know what I mean, doesn't get to stand trial and have to face everything that he's done, and it's essentially like he got away with it, or they did something back in the day, and when they finally catch him because they've been on the run all these years, then that person is old, it's over, they pass away, they never make it to trial. Like, hey, sometimes I be wanting to bring a few corpses back and be like, nah, fam, you're gonna stand trial just in case they trying to let you be, you know what I mean? No, there's an opportunity for you to pay an afterlife, hey, let's get them on trial.
All of the popes that were running around due to how different appointments were in those days. Number 5. The Ark of the Covenant. The next one is really more in the relief of conspiracy theory, if you will, but the Ark of the Covenant is one of the most important religious artifacts of all time, and many people believe that the Vatican actually has it inside of its walls. Why does that matter? Well, if you've read the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant was said to be the dwelling place of God in many respects, and it was carried all over the place by the Jewish people and protected at each and every cost. Opening it up while you're unclean or even lightly touching it without permission could be the result of your death. That's why Indiana Jones had the face melting scene. The thing apparently has great power, and thus it would make sense that a respectful entity like the Vatican would possess it and not tell anyone about it, as they wouldn't want anyone to take it from them. Number 4. The Miracle of Fatima. Next up, we have a topic that is much more creepy in the wait, this may have actually happened kind of way. Not all miracles or weird things take place at the Vatican. Sometimes they happen in Portugal. Specifically, in 1917 in Fatima, Portugal, a prophecy was heard that several special events would happen on that day that could only be miracles. Many people came together to see if it was true, and according to numerous accounts, the sun danced across the sky in ways that were actually impossible. Here's where things get just a bit wild, though. A bishop of the Vatican was then sent in to do an investigation, and he claimed that these events were in line with Catholic beliefs and prophecies. Wow. Number 3. Augustus of Prima Porta. Here's one that you may not have expected to see on this list. The Augustus of Prima Porta is actually a magnificent statue that was dug up back in 1863, and it's believed to have been a long-lost piece done by the late Caesar Augustus. Many would note that it's actually a blending of Greek and Roman styles, as the face looks very much like Augustus, while the body is much more in line with statues of Greek heroes and mythological figures of the past. Then, what does the Vatican have to do with any of it? Well, they now house the statue in one of their museums, which further goes to show their love for both the arts and Roman history. Number 2. The Mars of Todi. I'll stick with art for just a bit longer because I'm going to talk about the Mars of Todi, a near life-size bronze warrior that dates back from the 5th or early 4th century BC. After being rediscovered in 1835, people looked into what it was and how it was made, and found it to have likely been part of a religious sanctuary that was dedicated to a war god of the Umbrian tribe. As you can see, the statue has many details on it, and the fact that it was preserved for so long is actually a testament to just how well that it was built. As you've likely guessed, just like with the last statue, the Mars of Todi is on display at the Vatican museums. Number 1. Vatican Leaks. Now, you can't go without one last blow to show just how creepy and sometimes corrupt the Vatican can be. The Vatican Leaks incident was arguably one of the biggest blows to the reputation of the Vatican and various popes over the years. Long story short, a wealth of documents leaked out while internal conflict was going on within the Vatican itself. When
something leaks, the first thing I think of was it intentional? Was it intentional? Did somebody do this on purpose to create controversy? What is going on here? You just can't run into it without thinking that first.
Inside the institution were trying to be more transparent and conform to certain laws in modern society. Others wanted to keep things much more private, and so they kept it much more corrupt. The documents that were leaked became shocking, including how some people had to literally pay in order to get private meetings with the Pope. While the Vatican did attempt to stem the tide, the backlash to this was great, and many still feel that it reverberates with people even today. That's all from the realm of the Vatican and the weird and dark and very mysterious things that allegedly reside inside its walls. Which of these things do you feel is a very true part of the Vatican's history?